Hello, everybody out in Substack land. I have a very special guest today, Bashar al-Shawwa from Toronto, who turns out to be almost a neighbor of mine, just a stone's throw away. And I'd like to just begin, as I usually do, a bit of a ritual with the Nepalese bell or bowl. And as the great inventor Nikolai Tesla once said, if you want to understand the world, study vibration, frequency, and sound, because we're all vibration. It's what unites us. So, welcome, Bashar. How are
Hi,
you?
Hugh. How are you? And thanks for having me here
Good.
in such a sunny and beautiful day.
Yes. Well, I am delighted and honored and grateful that you were able to take some time because I understand you're a very busy guy.
Oh, I would be more than happy to join you in such.
Right. Well, um, so I'm just going to say a little bit about you, if you don't mind. And I have just a few lines here from one of the several websites that talk about you in glowing terms. And you have a master's degree in conflict resolution and development from the Arab American University in Palestine, and a bachelor's degree in engineering in medical and biological practices from Vladimir State University in the Russian Federation. Very cool. So you have a diverse educational background. And then it says you are a strategic and results oriented professional known for your expertise in community relations, gender equality, human rights, and effectiveness in the Middle East and North Africa region. Skilled in networking, public relations, and event management. Fluent in Arabic, English, and Russian, and a basic understanding reading skills in Hebrew. Wonderful. So polyglot, citizen of the world, and I know that also you work in the area of environmental discourse. Um, so first of all, I'd just like to hand it over. I have lots of questions in mind, and we're going to try to keep this to about 25 minutes, just a little taste, an appetizer. But I'd like to give the first word to you, just to express whatever you want to express. It could be how you're feeling today, or how's life.
Yeah, it's thanks for having me again, Hugh. And uh, as you said that now I'm a Toronto resident. A year and a half ago, I used to live in Palestine, and from there my story begins. So. I'll try to tell a bit about myself beyond the certificates and the experiences and my story goes far away to the early 1930s, where my grandfather moved from Gaza City to another city called Yafo, which
Mm,
is now inside Israel. It used
yes,
to be, yeah,
I,
Palestine at that
I was
time.
there once. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful city. So, and because it was booming like Toronto, so my grandfather moved his business from Gaza to Jaffa, and that led to my father be born in Jaffa in 1947.
Mm,
And 1 year after what so-called the Nakba happened, which is the war and led to the displacement of around 1 million Palestinians, which is 50% of the population.
50%.
And
Wow, huge.
yeah, and led to the establishment of the State of Israel. And my dad, with another million Palestinians, found themselves in refugee camps around the world. So, and same story happened to my mom because she's originally from the old city of Jerusalem.
Mm.
And they also ended up outside with her family displaced. And my parents met outside Palestine, and I was born in Kuwait as a first generation refugee.
Nice.
A few years later, the Gulf War started, and we started our journey trying to travel around, trying to find a place that will allow us live and study, and ended up traveling, in the Middle East until the Oslo Accords happened, and we had the first time chance to go back home. And I ended up back in Palestine, but in West Bank this time, with visits to the family in Gaza because the family roots are based in Gaza. And yeah, it brought hope at that time that peace might happen, future might appear, stability. Unfortunately, a few years later, the second intifada started, and again, the frustration and the hopelessness took place at that time. But I was lucky. I got a scholarship during the Intifada to go and study in Russia. So that's why how I ended in Russia having my degree. And a few years later, after I got my degree, things calmed down. I went back home, and we've been based in Ramallah, West Bank. I'm not sure if you know the place,
Yes, I spent
but
a night there with a Palestinian family
oh, that's great. It's a
many years
beautiful
ago.
city.
Yeah.
It's a nice, beautiful, friendly city, and with regular visits to the family in Gaza. And until 2014, I used to be an everyday average Palestinian who lost hope in peace, who lost hope in cooperation, who lost hope in, and I believe we lost trust and faith in humanity at that time. Many traumas, and it's a continuing
Of course.
trauma and
Yeah.
injustice been taking place with really, sad stories and experiences I had losing classmates, been shot and killed during the second intifada, me myself been detained, beaten by soldiers,
Yes.
and, as any other Palestinian young man. And in 2014, during the Gaza war, one of the wars, if you remember at that time,
Yes.
and a friend of mine approached me, a friend that I love and trust, and he told me, Bashar, let's have a peaceful protest. And my response was, what, how, like a peaceful protest? Now, we don't have this term in Palestine. A protest means we go to the checkpoint, we flame tires, we throw stones. This is
Mm.
the traditional thing we used to do as kids. And
Yeah.
he told me, no, no, let's have one of these European Western style. We go to the checkpoint, we light candles, we play music. The Western media would love such thing, and we will remain at the checkpoint until they end the war. And we ended up planning and having one of the biggest marches ever in West Bank, where around 50,000 people marched from Ramallah city to Qalandia checkpoint,
Mm.
which is a checkpoint between Ramallah and Jerusalem city.
Yes. Okay.
Kalandia. I'm sure you passed by when you went
I
to
must
Ramallah.
have. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a big checkpoint. And we ended up having this beautiful march. Families. I was with my sisters, my niece, my wife used to be my girlfriend at that time. And we marched beautifully towards the checkpoint. Unfortunately, when we reached there, we didn't have the chance to light candles or play music. Like the
No.
Israeli soldiers start immediately shooting live bullets, and we ended up having more than it was 2,070 Palestinians injured with live bullets.
Uh,
And I was one of these Palestinians. I received a bullet in my leg and it caused me a severe injury. I couldn't walk for almost a year, needed several surgeries to walk again. And
uh,
almost 1 year lying on the couch and feeding myself with anger because my first
of course.
time peaceful protest
Yeah.
and I receive a bullet. I couldn't walk, and imagine 4 nights
Uh-huh.
just thinking how I like did this to myself. How did I trust
Yeah.
that maybe humanity exists and I should seek revenge and anger, which is something,
Sure.
yeah, normal,
Understandable.
yeah.
Yeah.
For an energetic guy who spends almost all my time outside the house, ended up,
Yes.
couldn't walk. So
Yeah.
and with this pain and anger, I couldn't get away from my, pain until I got married and received my first daughter in 2016, Luna.
Mm. No. No.
And yeah, Luna. And when I hold this small beautiful, innocent creature, I just look at her and promised her that I would do whatever I can do that this tiny kid would never face the same messed up childhood, the same pain, the same injustice I had in my life. And since then, this was my commitment. So I dropped everything in my life. I changed my career. I used to be a biomedical engineer and then started researching the conflict, understanding how we can solve this issue. And since then, I joined what's so-called the human rights peace building camp inside Palestine and Israel. And I was heavily involved in finding ways to solve this um, a conflict as a word do not, define the situation. It's beyond conflict. It's more of any human situation that taking place because uh, some regimes, some powers, some institutions decided to adopt policy, conflict management policies,
Yes.
not
Right.
conflict resolution.
Hmm.
And yes, I chose environment because I love environment. So I became a specialized in water conflict, water diplomacy, water security, because unfortunately, media is explaining this conflict as a historical, religious, political
Yes.
conflict, but there is a huge conflict over resources.
Yes.
And I thought if we can go over one of the main topics of this conflict, which is water, and if we can transform water from a conflict reason into a resolution tool, this might lead to something, In addition,
I'm just going to jump in
yeah.
there because I remember years ago when I was in university studying peace and conflict studies, I chose to focus on the Middle East because I'd always been interested in that. Even took a course in Arabic, and I wrote an essay called "The Geography of Zion," which was really looking at water and land, very physical things as metaphors, but also reality, survival. We all need water to live. So you've done a lot of work around water in Canada as well, even in the Great Lakes, I think. So how would you take that one archetype, we could almost call it, a universal archetype, one of the four elements that every living being needs to survive, and apply it as a spiritual metaphor or psychological even, but also as reality on the ground for some kind of a conversation, dialogue that would start to address physical, practical solutions. Because a lot of the time, what the conflict is up here, it's ideologies and supposedly religion, but it's not really religion. It's just hatred and fear and generations of paranoia and stories that have been passed down. So if we could bring it down more to that vibration of the physical plane and say, okay, we're all here on this little piece of land, this sliver of land, which is historical, beautiful. It's like the heart of the world in a way, geographically. How can we use the land and everybody have enough to eat and feel safe and have justice for everybody across the line? And let's talk about the water. Where is the water? How much is there? How can we share it? How can we protect it? Can you say something to the actual geographical terms of water in what I call Palesrael, the Palestine and Israel smooshed together?
Yeah, unfortunately, people manage to inherit structural mechanisms of weaponizing
Yeah.
natural resources as part of conflicts.
Hmm.
And history taught us how wars and conflicts included weaponizing natural resources, including water. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in the Middle East, in a water scarce region, water been heavily weaponized. And again, in Palestine-Israel conflict, the water been one of the even in the peace process. By the way, when they drafted the first initial temporary peace process, they ended up having final stage issues. Like they, when they reach the final solution, they will solve these issues, which is include Jerusalem, borders, refugees, right to return,
Mm.
security, settlements, and water. So water been kept and had the same like importance, the same as Jerusalem,
Yes,
settlements, security, because it's a huge topic.
of course. Yeah.
And for sure, this included many other types of weaponizing water, which is access to water, renovating water, water rights, etc. So,
Mm.
and unfortunately, the latest, genocide, we witnessed like the incitement for genocide by weaponizing access to natural resources and food and energy, which included water. So, and sanitation. So, and by the way, you mentioned Canada, and one of the things that I was shocked when I came here, because we have water scarcity back home. I imagined coming to a country have almost 25% of water, like surface
Fresh
water,
water of the whole planet. Yeah.
yeah, of the whole planet. I never imagined that Canada would face issues with water, and I was really shocked how water been weaponized here in a different way. For sure, we have the traditional kinds of water weaponization, which is access to drinkable water for some communities here in Canada. But I found that water been weaponized by pushing people away from water. And I'll give you an example here
Okay.
that if you have a polluted lake or a beach or a river, usually we solve it by bringing everyone around the problem. Listen, guys, we have an issue, let's solve it. But here, it was easier to put a sign, don't swim, and
Yeah.
pushing people away from water, changing our cultural behavior, our natural connection to the water surface, to the water, body. And it's pushing us by time to normalize that water it's not an essential part of our life because we have lots of water, so we don't have to care about it. So water been weaponized in the in a systematic way, in education, in reaction, in solving issues, in conflict resolution. And that led to really, it was hard and sad for me to see such situations and incidents here, where a city like Toronto lost beaches
Hmm.
in the last 30, 40 years, like 11 or maybe 12 beaches where people used to swim, but they're not swimming anymore because they decided not
Yeah.
to have. I'm using this modern terminology as a researcher, which is water diplomacy. Let's bring people around the table. Let's
Yeah.
solve this issue instead of going and fighting each other and the blame game, blame the government, blame the private sector, the municipalities. No, let's bring everyone and solve this issue because it's a shared responsibility, topic, and
Well,
having a dialogue over water resources. So yeah, I totally agree with the concept that unfortunately people when we react like strangely when we lose hope, when we lose faith, and when we have fear taking over our behaviors, and when hate change our behavior and attitude and bring what I usually call the negative resilience, which is
right.
to maintain and to keep the status quo instead of changing it. And this is why my work here in Canada, and this will take me maybe to your next question, which is why and what I'm doing here. When I came here, I was shocked, honestly, by the level of polarization and hate taking over the Canadian society.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked how Canadians managed to not only import the conflict, they also brought hate and polarization and dehumanization. And honestly, you believe me, I'm coming from there, where when people reach the level of, you know, normalizing with hate, living with hate, justifying hate, cheering for hate, is gonna take this place to a really dark place. And I really couldn't manage to bear with this situation
Yeah.
because I'm coming from there. I'm coming from a place where people are like justifying horrible things happening for the sake of, fear, security, revenge, whatever the reason. And uh, here it comes that I really liked what you say when we like here and there and ideologies and how we deal with hate and fear and how we weaponize our pain, because pain is a dangerous weapon. And when we weaponize our pain to justify horrible things, here we can understand the atrocities we're watching around the world.
Mhm. Well, I can understand coming from a place where there's a limited amount of water. It's a fairly dry part of the world. And then coming to Canada and seeing, I think even in Quebec province, there are 1 million lakes. Ontario, almost as much, 800,000 or something like that. So we pollute one lake and no big deal. We'll just go to the next lake, right? But if that lake were the only source of drinking water or irrigation for a community, for a city, then it would be a lot different attitude. So it's true that we have such a wasteful approach here. Um, Let me come around because our time is rapidly going away. It feels like we've hardly begun. But um, the whole idea, when you were talking before, maybe even before we started to record, about your father coming from Gaza, moving to Jaffa, your mother from Jerusalem, moving. Um, Actually, I think your father was born at the same year I was born, 1947. Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
I was born in a small town in Canada. So with Israel, it's a big deal, the whole Zionist project, creating a land where the Jews who had been persecuted in Europe for centuries, Eastern Europe, especially in Russia and so on, and then finally having a safe place, a refuge. It's a heartwarming story. But of course, the other side, the dark side of the story is the Nakba, where almost 1 million Palestinians were killed or their land was taken away. They were forced off their land. And it's called the catastrophe, right, in Arabic. Yeah. So the whole idea of for the Jewish people is the Aliyah, I think it's called. It means the going up, right, from the word Ali, the name Ali, which is lofty or high. And so there was this process of waves of immigration, refugees, even back in the 30s, in that period of time when you're talking about your mother and father in Palestine. And it continues going on. There are new waves of people from Russia and from different lands. The right of return, for the Palestinian people. How do you speak about that lack of equality that the Jewish people were invited to come, as many as wanted, and have land free or very cheap? What about the today, after what is it, 80 years, I guess, almost 78 years?
Around, yeah.
Yeah. What about the Palestinian refugees who are in Lebanon and Jordan and so on, many countries actually? What about their right of return? Is there any way that that could happen through diplomacy gradually?
Oh, I love how we people trying to jump always to the end solution without understanding the basics and the
Right.
basis behind.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I would say what happened to the Jewish nation in the West, the discrimination and the violence and the kill and the torture that led to a Jewish political project like the Zionist project to weaponize the pain and the trauma of the Jewish nation and to use this pain as a weapon that led to forcibly displace my nation, my Palestinian people, including my father, my grandfather, my mom, my entire family,
Yeah.
and led that I was born a refugee outside my country. And the story, I saw the story that from a place that there was no hope at the beginning, because after Oslo, my dad got a special permit and he went to visit the place where he was born in Jaffa. And when he reached there, he found an old friend of my grandfather, took him to the place and told him, listen, this is your house. And by the way, we do have the documents and we have the ownership documents of that place until this
Uh-huh.
moment. And
Okay.
so my dad, like I believe in a naive way, he knocked the door and an Israeli Jewish citizen opened the door, and my dad told him, "Listen, we now had peace, and I had the chance to come here. I was born in this place. I'm not coming to take it, but I really want to see it if it's possible."
Right.
And the situation that this individual just start to shout, to scream, and he threatened that he will call the police for my dad if he don't leave immediately. So my dad came back home with a broken heart. At that time, I look at him in the eyes. I told him, "You are coward. You are a total failure. You believed in peace. You trusted those people. We can't trust these people."
Uh-huh.
And I remember at that time, my dad I knew why my dad didn't take me with him, because he will knew that my reaction would be not
Uh,
friendly at his.
okay. Right.
But yeah, and I kept this in my mind, and I always reminded my dad with that incident that, listen, these people found a way to steal and to stole our houses. They kicked you out from your place, and now they are, even not allowing you to see the place where you was born. So this is my personal story when it comes to the
Sure.
Nakba and the catastrophe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But until I became a conflict resolver and start to understand how this happened, and how and the Jewish nation managed to justify and avoid things like avoid mentioning even the Nakba and the catastrophe and displacements of the Palestinian people, and how they've been tempted by promising a land without a people for a people without a land. The Aliyah concept that you are rising, you're upgrading, you're uplifting, you are better if you leave Europe and go to the homeland. And this homeland you've been promised by God. Even the secular, non-believers already took the idea, and I found that this was a systematic, structural thing before getting to the blame game. But at the same time, I had the chance to study the international order to understand how this world is working, and I found that there is international law and order. There are resolutions when it comes to the right to return for any displaced people, including Palestinians. So, as a Palestinian, by the international law, by the international order, I have the right to go to the place where my grandfather, my father,
Sure.
was born and displaced
Right.
from. And I kept my belief and faith in this international order because it's the order that humanity once decided that we failed big time and would never again fail. So let's have order to avoid injustices, to avoid,
Yes.
terrorism, to avoid violence, to avoid hatred. So for like until a while, I always like I before never believed, but later on I start to believe that maybe international,
Yeah.
order and
Right.
international human rights law
Yes.
is something that as humans, no matter our backgrounds, our beliefs, our citizenship, we should stand for it, because it was our oath as a humanity that we would never fail again. We would never screw our human ships, sorry, our human beings, our human values, our rights. So, and again, do I believe? Yes, I believe, because part of me reaching the facts that the spoilers on this equation, I call them the spoilers just to generalize, they want us to lose hope. They want us to lose faith in humanity, in ourselves, in the other, because this will feed their, cause. This will fuel their propaganda
Yeah.
that there is no hope, no future, no trust, no faith. So this will continue to increase the hatred, to the
Yeah.
isolation of people, of pushing us away. The same way pushing people from the lake,
Yes.
from the beach,
Yes.
push us away from trusting and
It's
having
always
hope
good
and
to
faith.
ask the
Yeah.
question, when you see a hatred, we'll say, or fear, perhaps, anger, which is irrational. I mean, you can understand some of the causes, perhaps, but it's like way more than it would logically be present. A good question to ask is who's benefiting from this? Who's benefiting from the increase of hatred and disunity and misunderstanding? So I'm going to jump a little even more into the future with the question about the right of return. So let's say there are protocols in international law for in the future possibility of the refugees being able to return to what is now Israel, Palestine, whether it's the West Bank or Gaza or Israel itself. So let's say all 5 million of them came. I don't know how many there are, but all 5 million said, "Yeah, let's get on the next bus and get down there and build a little house and whatever." The fear on the part of Israeli Jews is that, who are now 50% of the population, pretty close, if you take all the occupied territories and Israel, that there would be a demographic. They wouldn't be the majority anymore or anywhere close to it. So there's a fear that they would be hurt or endangered. So do you believe? I know it's a bit of a fantasy almost, but if that were to happen, do you believe that the Jewish people in that land would be in jeopardy or in great danger if there were an Arab or Palestinian majority?
I
That's
hope
a hard
not.
question, I know, but
No, no, it's not. It's not. It's like it's an imaginary, fantasized question. I will go back and I will use history because we always shared that land. The beauty about Palestine and that piece of land, it
right.
included many nations. It was always and since ever diversified community from different, like not only Jews and Arabs and Muslims. We had, you've been there, you saw it. We had from African ancestors. We
Yes.
had Romanians, we had Armenians, we had Europeans, the Crusades
Greeks.
before
Yes.
and after, Greeks, Egyptians. And history taught us that this land always had this a unique thing, like foreign forces come, locals fight these foreigners, they kick them out, another, foreign. But for the first time, when a group of the people who live in that land decide to take over the entire
Yeah.
land. And here it comes the ethnic cleansing concept of the process.
Right.
But getting back to your question, that first of all, let's agree that we will reach an agreement. When there is a political will, let's say Mr. Trump tomorrow will wake up and say, listen, we're going to solve this issue. The same way happened in history, by the way. We
Right.
woke up, we found Kosovo in the middle of the Balkans, where all the neighbors were against having a Muslim country in
That's
there.
right. Yeah.
We had South Sudan in history. We had, UK Ireland issue. Conflict's been solved when the international community, when the powers decided that, okay, it's not feasible anymore to have this conflict, let's solve it.
Hmm.
When we reach that level, I believe security is a result, it's an outcome, it's not a goal.
Uh,
We usually saw in this conflict that security is the goal, security is the fear. No, no, security is a result. We had security issues because we decided not to solve this conflict. If we solved it, because security is a result, like things that unfortunately didn't start with October 7th. October 7th was a result. And the second intifada and all the wars and the 67 war, the 48, all of these wars are results, not the reasons, not the cause,
not the
the root
causes.
cause of,
Okay.
yes.
Right.
And I believe that answering your question, because you asked about security, if we remove the reasons behind the concerns, issues would be solved. By the way, I'm not here to advocate for a two-state, one-state, whatever, but I do advocate for the homeland issue. If people do believe that that land is a homeland,
Mm.
this is their right. And
Yes.
I'm not like aiming for one nation or for one people. I'm talking about the homeland connection because we have connection to that land. Jews has connection to that land. So this is homeland issue must be solved.
Can be homeland for
And
everybody.
yes, anyone who believe in Christianity, it's home because Jesus was born there.
Right.
As
Exactly.
example, the
Yeah.
Baha'i, you have the beautiful garden of Haifa, which I love and
Yes.
visit all the time,
That's right.
which is a symbolic religious place. And you
Mm.
have a connection even if you was born here in a small town in Canada. So
Yes.
again, there's like, and you asked about the spoilers who's benefiting from this. Who's benefiting from this is the one whose existence depends on the conflict,
Mm.
on the injustices, on the war, on the weapons trade, on the interests,
Mhm.
not the rights, not the human values. And again, this applies to different parties in this conflict. I'm usually in my work, I avoid blame game because we're not here to discuss political issues. But I'm happy to, whenever we have the chance, I'm happy
Right.
to
Yes.
educate the audience about the political issue because I managed to interview many of the negotiators during the peace process in Palestine and Israel to understand.
Hmm.
And I found, by the way, that Palestinian and Israeli negotiators solved every complicated issue.
Hmm.
We reached as negotiators the level of solving Jerusalem, settlers, settlements, borders, the right to return, name it, it was
Really?
solved. What
Really?
we lack is the political will
Ah,
to solve the issue. So,
yes.
answering your question, hopefully, first, let's reach the moment that people are agreeing to solve,
Yeah.
to have an agreement. Later on, all of these are details. Believe me, we can overcome as a humans. The humans are incredibly coping with situation. We
We
can find a
we're very
solution, but
adaptable
adaptable. Yeah,
and
thank you. Yeah,
creative too. Well, I like
yeah.
that. Just sort of turning it on its head because talking about who did what to whom in what year, and it's like crossing the T's and dotting the I's. There's no end to that argument. But if we look at the basic humanness, the humanity within all people, and the love we have for our families and our community and the land that we live on, something that's common ground, literally, then that's a starting point. And then the attitude or the will, the political will, which is a kind of attitude as well, um, instead of trying to convince the other side or the world through propaganda that only this way is the correct way, but by looking at unity in the beginning as the underpinning, but also as the end result. So starting with principles of unity and then going into the various different situations and deliberations and finding the solutions to all the different categories of dispute, and then coming back to even a deeper level of that unity where people of all backgrounds, Jews, Christians, Arabs, can be proud to be part of not only the land but the process of finding the unity and the agreement. I mean, it'll be something to celebrate even more than
Sure.
any other country, perhaps. As you were saying, in Canada, we take our environment for granted and pollute lakes like nothing. But a small piece of land with a very limited amount of resources, when the people finally do, maybe with the help of the world, the community of nations, even international troops, UN troops someday, maybe for a while, intermediary period, it will be so satisfying.
Thank you for framing it in this way. You know, um, People are fighting over lands, but are we really earn and deserve such land that we're fighting for? We're destroying this land. We're burning this land that we're claiming it's our land and we need to fight for it
Right.
and to, you know?
Yes.
And again, if we deserve this land or not, you asked me about my Palestinian identity and how I look to things like the right of return.
Hmm.
And I ask myself this question all the time. And I believe this is the challenge for polarization and hate, where people believe that my identity is the reason to hate.
Uh,
And this is when I ask my participants in the dialogue session, uh, what's the biggest challenge for you to be in this room with the other, with the enemy? And do your identity prevent you? Because
right.
I've been asked, Bashar, how come with all these losses, with the ongoing genocide, my family lost 157 people in Gaza. I
Wow.
lost uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, nieces with names, like real people with names, with real memories, people I knew. I lost friends, colleagues, and unfortunately, we're still counting dead bodies in Palestine.
Of
And
course, for
and
a long time. Yeah.
yes, and I've been asked how come, how come, and here is the question of my identity. My identity forced me to honor the memory of my lost people by calling for hope, by
Yes.
calling for justice, by
Uh,
calling for human rights, no matter where or when.
yeah.
And you mentioned it when things are complicated. This is my approach. When the situation is so complicated, I simplify it and give it a look from a human base, like from a human
Yeah.
values perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And you will easily reach the place that, killing, hitting, burning, hurting innocent people is wrong. No matter where, no matter when, no matter
Absolutely.
who. Yeah, it's so simple. It's a simple question to answer. And here it comes our values. If I'm a double standard Hippocratic person or not,
Yes.
because my pain is more important than your pain.
Mhm.
My trauma is more important than your trauma. Here it comes the reasons why we believe that hate is safe. Unfortunately, hate is uniting people here. Hate is safe on the short term. That's why people believe when they are afraid and
Yeah.
in pain that hate might protect them. So that's why they follow the spoilers
Yes.
because the spoilers act strong,
It can be
that they can
very
protect them.
it can be very empowering for in a limited way, of course, and for a limited time, but to have a band of people that believe the same thing you do, and it's fueled by hatred. It can be, it leads to more. It builds on
Ex-
itself, it eats on itself. So we should wind down now, but
Mm.
um, I'm just thinking that this conversation, that you're very much engaged with in your work professionally and very committed to and devoted to. It's very inspiring because I can imagine being a Palestinian with the history that you have in your family. There are many ways a Palestinian could dislike, at least, or hate Jews in Israel. But you have transcended that in spite of your own personal pain and story. So, other people who are interested in maybe learning more or being part of this discourse of authentic dialogue and peace building, and I imagine also that certain funding is needed. Is there an institution or is there a website or is there a way that people who are watching this conversation, for example, might participate or reach out?
Yeah, thank you for offering this. For sure, I would ask you to share my LinkedIn.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah, the link to my LinkedIn account, and anyone who believes that they need to ask more to,
Uh-huh.
to explore, I'm happy to answer. They can DM me immediately,
Okay,
and I will answer immediately.
excellent.
Again, it's what we're doing. You cannot eliminate or delete hate. Hate existed since ever and will exist forever. What I'm trying to do in my work is to train, to raise the capacity, the skills of dealing with hate. So when hate comes to you, it doesn't change your attitude.
Hmm.
You just maintain yourself to reduce hate at your door, at yourself, at your identity. That way, it will never change your attitude and
Yes,
behavior.
yes,
It's a life-saving skill. In fact, in Canada, there is something within the culture which is safe spaces. Like it's safe. And I found that the safe spaces is a way of silencing, canceling, avoiding issues
right.
instead of differentiate between safety and discomfort.
Mm.
Living in discomfort, it's a life-saving skill. As a person who like
Mhm.
it saved me many times because I managed to tolerate discomfort.
Yes,
This kind of skill, that these skills are needed to reduce hate, to reduce polarization. Then we can transfer to the dehumanization and dehumanization of the other. And yeah, for sure, I believe that hate and polarization damaged the Canadian social cohesion
mm,
because Canadians for many years adopted the safe space, avoided talking about issues, dusting under the carpet, whatever is the definition. And this led that people were when people were really afraid, when people were really in pain, they didn't know how to deal with hate. They
hmm,
didn't know how to deal with pain, with fear. And this led to reactions we're witnessing in the streets in Canada where hate was justified. People cheered for horrible stuff. People, fundraising for horrible stuff. We can see, we can witness, and this not only applies to anti Semitism, Islamophobia, anti Arabic narrative, it's happening everywhere
yes,
on different levels, different issues. You can tell the entire environment is welcoming hate.
It
So
is.
it's not about Israel, Palestine anymore. It's
No.
about how we as humans should deal with hate. Should we allow hate to change our values,
Yes.
or should we allow our values to change hate? How
Yeah.
we can deal. This is my approach, and it's
Yes.
basically about being in a brave space instead of a
A
safe
brave
space. You
space, did you
should,
say? Yeah.
yeah, brave space. You should feel brave enough and safe enough to
Yes.
express yourself,
Exactly.
experience the discomfort without dehumanizing the other, without justifying and
Right.
injustices. So
Two things
I
come to two
yeah,
things
it's
come to mind. One is there's a martial art called Aikido. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
yeah.
the the opposition comes, but instead of meeting it with force, you just step out of the way. So it flies across the room and hits the other wall. That's one model, I suppose. And the other is what was I going to say? Um, I forget. I'm allowed that. I'm 78 years old.
I
It'll come
forget all the
back.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, oh, I know what it was. When there are two sides or more, like this, very often we're pointing the finger of blame and saying, you did this, you did that, or you didn't do this, you should have. But when you look at the hand, there are three fingers that are pointing back to oneself. So in a mediation group or a therapy group, if we have some kind of a conflict, interpersonal conflict, and we can set up a safe place for people to be able to express themselves, um, then we look at what makes it safe. And if a person can divulge, talk about their own pain rather than blaming the other person, then that opens up empathy. And I think in groups, there are some groups in Israel and Palestine where they're small still, but where people from both sides come together and they talk about, two families that have both lost a son or a daughter, for example, and they cry and they express their feelings. And by establishing that common ground of humanity, then the next steps can be taken. So maybe that principle can apply in a bigger way too. But what you were saying about the what's happening in the world today, it's true. It's just people are triggered so easily, and people's nervous systems are like this. People will polarize on any issue and find it very, very difficult to come to that meeting place. So the whole human population is going through a crisis, hopefully an initiation to a better place. But sometimes in holistic health, we talk about the healing crisis, where it gets worse before it gets better. So I think, we're witnessing that in the United States, in the Middle East, and everywhere. That things are getting worse, and that's just the way it is. They're building up. There's an intensification, but sometimes through that process, we become clear, as painful as it might be, but we can become more clear of what the reality is residing within.
Yeah, first of all, I'm honored I belong to that camp of people
Yeah,
where Palestinians and Israeli, we decided instead of trying and thinking of how to kill each other to work together to co-resist the status quo. I belong to that camp. I worked and still working with with organic connections to these, hundreds of institutions and thousands of individuals. We are minority, yes, because the propaganda is about hate and violence and genocide and ethnic cleansing and apartheid, name it.
uh-huh.
But it's about when people decide that we don't like the situation and we need to figure a way to co-resist the status quo. That's why they call it co-resistance back home. We co-resist the injustice, we co-resist the occupation, we co-resist the ethnic cleansing, we co-resist the war crimes. And this will lead us to something, hopefully.
Yes, yeah,
And again, I believe that when I came here and witnessed how Canadian society dealing with our conflict, with my pain, I felt sorry because I saw two camps. It's like a football match, a win, a zero sum thing, and
right,
and this camp cheering for some camp. others are, and I sense that my pain was used, abused in a really bad way. I'm not saying like good people with good intentions, like good-hearted people, but they don't know that they are not helping the cause and they are damaging the social structure of this country. So, this is why I started focusing over the topic of Palestine and Israel, the Islamophobia, the anti-Semitism, the anti-Palestinian racism, all these kind of hates, because it's trendy. But again, you are witnessing times, it happened in history, by the way, where the leaders of the most powerful countries going in a press conference saying horrible stuff, like an
Mhm.
act of war stuff, according to international law. As an expert in international law, some statements are an act of war.
Of
When
course.
saying Canada is the state
Yes.
51, this is an act of war. This is not a joke.
Uh-huh.
And how these powers, how these spoilers are benefiting from normalizing hate, from normalizing injustice, from normalizing war crimes, crimes against humanity. It's structural. It's not a joke or something happen here or individual incidents. All these incidents are part of a bigger
Mhm.
threat to humanity. That's why I'm feel the threat as a person who suffered and still suffering from hate and conflicts and wars on personal, physical, emotional, aspects. So again, it's so dangerous. I know that we here in Canada feel I'm enjoying this heaven of safety and
Mhm.
humanity and nice, kind, polite, hospitable people of Canada, and I'm really honored and lucky to manage after 1 year to bring my wife and kids here, and we're enjoying this heaven. But I'm terrified also
Yeah.
that hate is contagious here.
Oh yeah.
What's happening around the world is hitting Canada and the Canadian
Of
social
course it
fabric,
is.
the
Yeah.
Canadian cohesion. Safety and security issues might raise if we don't stop and have a firm step towards this hate, that
Mhm.
we can't allow it into our houses, our
We
homes,
have
our
to be
families, our
we have to
workplaces.
be
Yeah.
alert, conscious, mindful, and vigilant, and then have practical things that we can do. So just to finish, let's imagine that there's a Jewish person, maybe an Israeli person even, who is watching this, and they may have a lot of accumulated trauma, Holocaust survivors in their family, and who knows what. And their orientation towards seeing you, a Palestinian here on the screen, is maybe he's a terrorist. I'm exaggerating, but maybe not that much. So, is there a little simple message that you, from your heart to that person's heart, that you could articulate that would somehow help to diminish or melt that wall of ice and fear and hatred? Something that you could say that would be reassuring or acknowledging, empathy, empathetic.
Yeah, I wish I have this magical stick where we can solve issues. Delete hate, delete injustice.
Magic wand. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can start by saying that uh, I'm trying my best as a human to see myself equal with other humans. Not more important, not less important. I'm not less a human than any other one. And there is no any other one is more human than I. And why I'm saying this? This is my recipe when things are complicated,
Right.
where there is trauma and pain, and no matter the trauma and the pain size and narrative, humanity solve issues. And being a human means that you're firm towards the human values. You're just, you're sharp when it comes to positions. I'm not saying that we're so soft and living in the la la land and no, it's life is hard and we do face serious stuff and we need to stand firm where injustice is happening, when humans are damaged or targeted, where the values are threatened, when human rights are threatened. So, but at the same time, it's part of our identity. What I'm saying here, I hope this would be helpful, that
Okay.
let's try it. Nothing to lose. And if you believe that there is something preventing you from being with me at the same room, I would love to hear more about this.
Okay.
What prevents us
Right.
from being at the same room together?
Yeah.
What kind of threat we have towards
Mhm.
what? Is it our identities? Is our beliefs? Is your religion telling you not to be at the same room?
Mhm.
Is you being Baha'i prevents you from being with me at this room? Is you, as a person born in a small village in Canada, prevents you from having a chat with me as Bashar? Again, all these questions, let's ask them and answer them while trying to be in discomfort
Mhm.
without dehumanizing the other. Again, my only concern, how they call it, red line, taboo,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
when I feel that I'm a less human for
Uh-huh.
the other.
Right.
This is my, this when
Yeah.
things I
Like
can't
a
honestly
boundary. Yeah.
tolerate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a boundary. And again, I've been asked, Bashar, if you see the soldier who shot you, the sniper, would you forgive him?
Yes.
Honestly, I never asked myself this question, and I don't know how I'm gonna react because that person caused me pain, like physical pain and emotional pain, and I can't honestly find a way to justify what he's done to me or her done to me, whatever. But I can tell you that I would ask for accountability. I would ask for justice, but I would never dehumanize. I
Yes.
would never dehumanize because dehumanization, it means that I will justify horrible stuff to the other.
Exactly.
Then I would become a hypocritic double standard person when it comes to my cause, which is hard. Something, listen, we're humans, you. By the way, I'm coming from a culture, and you've been to places I come from. If you respect someone, you speak honestly and openly.
Mhm.
It's not about forgiving. It's not about losing our identity. Me and this person that you suggested coming to the same room would leave both with same identities. I would come as Bashar, leave as
Yes.
Bashar, the Palestinian Arab Muslim who belongs to that conflict, and this person will come and leave with the same identity issues, but at
Right.
least both would experience being in discomfort without
Right.
being afraid.
Yes.
Yeah, so
It's
this is
like
what I'm saying. Yeah.
it's like being able to be comfortable with discomfort
Yeah,
because life is often uncomfortable. So and then of
yeah.
course it always helps to have a facilitator or a third party to maintain the protocols, right? So if things do start to get into problems, then can bring back to, like they used to say, leave your ego at the door when you go into a meeting. So if somehow people can just leave all the ideologies behind them and see the other people as human beings, flesh, blood, love and life and needs and normal fears, of survival, then we realize we're all pretty much the same with some minor differences.
You and I I play the role of facilitator. This is I'm doing this. This is my full-time job. In
Right.
fact, I ask my participants to keep the ego inside the room, to bring the ideology inside the room. Let's make it complicated.
Yes.
And let's see the real you here in this room. But please, when I ask you a question, as you, not what ideology tells you to answer. So
Yes. Exactly.
what how you define Zionism as example, your definition, not the Google definition, how you define, injustice, how you define genocide, settlement, resistance, terrorism. We discuss these hard topics
Yeah.
and boiling stuff. And
Yeah.
by the way, at the end of our sessions, which is a process, it's a life process, it's not like a one-time issue,
Of course. Yeah.
and because this is a skill, and we find that we can survive and live with hard discussions. We can answer the hard question and live with it without losing any part of our own identity. In fact, it increase and it builds up our,
Yeah. Yeah.
tolerance to hate. Again, it's a lifestyle, and I hope for your audience that this wasn't a boy, a boarding.
Not
Yeah,
at
it's
all. It was very
yeah.
interesting, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And one of I like to see more spaces where Palestinian people can have a voice. This one small part. I've interviewed some Jewish people, Palestinian, but all of them, like yourself and myself, in that camp of wanting to dialogue and wanting to find solutions. Um, but it's a wonderful conversation, and I think one of your main messages for people is that there is hope, even though it seems very dark sometimes desolate, that there's always hope and things are happening to go towards that.
We don't have the luxury to lose hope here.
Exactly. It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
When hope
yeah,
is gone, we might as well kill ourselves. I mean, it's as long as there's some practical action, which is fueling the hope, to keep it real and not just a fantasy. So,
yeah.
shukran, as we say in Arabic, thank you so much. And please come back again. We've gone a little bit over the half hour, but it was just such a such an interesting conversation. Maybe you'll come back again in the future and we can continue on.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. And again, I'm sorry if we took more than the planned time, and I hope this wasn't boring for your audience. And
Yeah,
I would be more than happy to come back again. I learned from you, and thank you for the opportunity.
great. Okay, well, maybe we'll have a coffee sometime. We're only about 15 blocks apart. We can meet somewhere in between. Continue the
I'm
conversation.
open.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
open and ready down for such an idea. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Hugh.
So take care, Bashar. Bye bye.